Hey guys, Derek Long here at Quest Trust Company. So I'm real excited that we, for our speaker today, what we typically like to do is start off the new year with some new faces and fresh, friendly people to really come on and maybe educate us in different areas that we haven't had a chance to listen to before. Now, if you're brand new to Quest, we always like to kind of start off with a little bit about who we are and what we like to do. So this is what we consider to be one of our weekly self-directed IRA classes. We try to do these every Tuesday at 12 o'clock. So if you have any questions as we go through these motions, please let me know. Leverage the chat box right there down in the bottom hand corner. And we also going to have some moderators on here that will answer any questions as we go about this. All right. So real quick, who is Quest? We are considered to be one of the largest self-directed IRA companies out there, especially here in Texas. We have a little over 20,000 active investors currently in the U.S., a little over $2 billion in assets, and some are always right around 100 employees. Now, always we like to give our quick disclaimer that we're only here for educational purposes, right? Everything we talk about today is for your education. That's why we want you to ask us questions. Give us feedback on these things and let us know what you want to hear in the future, right? We never can give you investment advice. We can't give you legal advice, right? That's always the stuff you got to pay for to an attorney. So make sure you're leveraging that chat box and asking us questions down below. All right. So what is a self-directed IRA? This is the number one question we always get asked. And I try to remind people that is nothing special. You can read everywhere you want in the IRS tax code. A self-directed IRA does not exist, right? We use that as a marketing term. So remember, if you have an IRA with Quest, we let you invest in real estate. If you have an IRA with Fidelity, they let you invest in stocks, right? Or mutual funds. There's not one that's better than the other. They're just different. So what do you want to invest in? So remember, there's all sorts of benefits from diversification, right? Tax savings, social investing. But the main one I always like to think about is investing in what you know best. If you're here on this platform right now, right, you probably are looking to do some sort of real estate style investing. But if I ask the majority of you, especially if you don't have an account with me already, you probably have that 401k or IRA held in a stock market portfolio or a mutual fund portfolio. Why is that? Why, if you understand real estate, why is it that that's what you want to invest in? Do we have all our funds there? Most of the time, the answer is you just didn't know this was a possibility. So I say, hey, let's take some of that retirement money you have and let's start to invest in real estate and really invest into what you know best. Okay. So there's all types of plans that can be self-directed, from traditional and Roth IRA. These are definitely the two most popular. We have those employer plans that allow for huge contribution limits, or like the solo 401k that allows for checkbook control. We even have specialty plans with like HSAs and ESAs. Don't forget, we can set up the majority of these plans right now still for the year of 2021, even though we're in 2022, and you can still contribute for the previous year. So take advantage of that before it's too late. All right. There's obviously a ridiculous amount of investment and choices. I put a couple of them up here on the screen, from single family homes to those LLCs and joint ventures, sometimes partnerships. We've seen a lot of oil and gas lately. That could be just because it's been so expensive and going up, to even notes. I love notes because it's very passive. So if you have questions about one of these topics, let us know. Make sure you get with us, because we wouldn't mind bringing a specialized speaker to teach a topic in one of these areas. Just email our marketing team and we'll find you a good professional speaker. Now, I always like to go through the quick process of what it looks like to use a self-directed IRA. Obviously, guys, I have to set you up an account if you want to go through those motions. Next, we have to fund it by doing a transfer or rollover of one of those other retirement plans. You always need to locate your investment, complete some pretty standard investment forms, and lastly, Quest is going to take a minute and fund your investment using your self-directed IRA. So this process goes very quick, usually on average 24 to 48 hours at any point in time. So don't forget about our weekly classes that we do. We even have ones like happy hours that we're going to be doing tonight in our local Houston office. Make sure you show up here. We're going to have food and drinks for everybody, right? It's going to allow for great networking. And we're bringing in a speaker that we've never brought in before to talk about things. Was this also? Oh, yes. Quick question here from David Johnson. Was this also a live evening? Yes, it is. Absolutely. The one tonight will be 100% live and in person. It will also be online if you want to attend online, but I'm telling you guys, You'll get more out of the event if you show up here in person. So I'll see you tonight at 6:30. All right. Now, without any further ado, what I kind of want to do is talk a little bit about our speaker that we're going to have come up here. Now, she couldn't make it live and in person, so we did a quick recording, right? But still feel free to ask questions as this class goes on. The main reason why is we have moderators here that are going to be able to answer any questions that you may have. But the person we're going to be bringing on is actually going to be the Quest Trust Company's compliance attorney. Now, I think this is very important because a lot of times people, they get scared of using self-directed IRAs. They're scared of a prohibited transaction. They're scared of what needs to happen and what does the process look like. A lot of this comes down to due diligence. So what better person to bring in than Quest's own personal attorney, right, that we use on our compliance side, that 100% reviews all in documents, oversees our quality control and auditing team, right? And her name is T. Valdez. So we're going to go ahead and bring up her video right now. And if you have any questions, please let us know right down there in the chat box below. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone, today's topic is self-directing safely. And the main thing that I am going to discuss and try to hone in on today is due diligence. Okay, so it all comes down to due diligence and how you can conduct due diligence throughout the life of your investment to ensure that it is performing properly for you. Nicole already went through our disclaimer, but I would just like to put it up here again. We do not provide any tax, legal, investment advice, any structure and advice. We don't endorse any products. And in terms of legal advice, that is a little hard for me because I am an attorney, but acting in this role, serving as a custodian for Quest Trust Company, we are here to offer you this education so that you can use it for your next investment, okay? All the information being presented to you today is for educational purposes. As Nicole mentioned, work with your professional advisors, whether they be an attorney, an accountant, a financial advisor, a financial planner, to make the best decisions for your self-directed IRA, okay? A little bit about me. I am a licensed attorney, and Nathan will say quite often that you shouldn't hold that against me. But I have been working in this role as a compliance officer with Quest Trust Company. It'll be 4 years this November. I am also a certified IRA service professional. And so just getting into today's presentation. So Nicole went over a little bit about what we do and who we are at Quest, but I, have a different spin on it. So a self-directed IRA, Nicole mentioned that it's no different than an IRA that you would hold at, a normal brokerage company like Charles Schwab or Fidelity, something of that nature. It is a marketing term, and it is based on what it is that you can invest in the actual account. Okay, but in legal terms, what is an IRA? An IRA is a trust held for your benefit at retirement. So in order for you to benefit from it at retirement, you have to hold it in a separate bucket legally. Okay, you can't commingle your personal funds with your IRA funds. There are rules in terms of maintaining the account to ensure that you can benefit from it at retirement. That's how the accounts were designed, and that's how they're structured. And we have to comply with all the strict rules in order to benefit from it later, okay? How do you use it? So Nicole touched on this as well. It allows you to diversify your portfolio. And if you are an investor in your own right, it allows you to invest in what you know best. I think the most beneficial part of a self-directed IRA is that it's a powerful wealth growing tool, okay? Because it can grow tax deferred, and in a lot of cases, if you meet the criteria, it can grow tax free and penalty free at the time that you retirement and take distributions from the account. Okay, with self-directed accounts, you are able to invest in alternative investments, which I've seen historically have higher yields than what you would find on the stock market, depending on the deals that you find. Okay, so the opportunity to grow your IRA is significant when it comes to self-direction. And so we've been talking about all the positive things about self-directed accounts, but what is the catch? So how do you properly use it? I keep saying that there are strict, rules and regulations associated with a self-directed IRA. I believe the main thing that could hurt your retirement is if you conduct a prohibited transaction. That is just one of many rules you should be cognizant of if you are using a self-directed IRA account, because the penalties associated with conducting or engaging in a prohibited transaction is that your entire IRA ceased to exist. Okay, so whatever you own in it today will be distributed to you, and that could be a taxable event depending on how old you are, the type of account, and things like that. Okay, so understanding the rules will help you benefit at retirement. And most importantly, the thing I want to say, what you clients should understand when they have a self-directed account is that you, the client, the account holder, is the fiduciary to the account. Okay, it's not me, it's not Nicole, it's no one here at Quest, it's you. You have the power to select the investments in your account, but with that same breath, you also, as a fiduciary, have to do what is in the best interest of your IRA. Okay, and that kind of leads us into the main topic of discussion today, which is due diligence, right? When it comes to due diligence, it is the process of investigation or taking reasonable steps before engaging in an agreement, okay? But serving in this role and having worked for Quest, I've been able to see that due diligence does not just occur at the very beginning when you are considering investment, but it happens throughout the life of your investment, and it also happens when your investment comes to an end. Okay, so those are the main things that I'm going to discuss today. With your retirement account, one thing you have to keep in mind is that building a retirement account to a substantial size should take quite some time because you're limited to how much you can contribute on an annual basis. So if you're acting in the best interest of your IRA and you're conducting the due diligence that you should be conducting, you're maintaining, the balance of the account. You're making sure that the assets in your account is protected. So again, you can benefit from that at the time of retirement. Okay. And so first, before you purchase an investment, I think this is the point in the entire process where due diligence will take a lot of work. Okay, you're going to have to put in a lot of work after you think you found an investment. Here's just a list of questions and things that you should consider before funding that actual deal. Okay, first things first, do you know who you're doing business with? I think this is kind of a really big question, because if you know the person that you're doing business with, they should be able to provide you with historical data. If the company or if they've been in business for a long time, if they've been in this area for a long time, for instance, if they are developers, they've been buying and flipping houses for a long time, they should be able to provide you with some type of portfolio that shows you where they've been, how they've used funds that they've raised, and what the results and what the potential return can be if you invest your money into their business, right? Other things they should be forthcoming with are financials and references. If they are reputable, investment sponsors, they should have a list of reference that you can potentially just call and ask questions about how, older investors or past investors have benefited from working with this individual. And then lastly, you have to ensure that if they specify that they are registered, for instance, they are a financial advisor or a wealth planner, most of these classifications require that individual to be registered on some public platform, right? So you can log on, search to see if their license is still accurate, is still valid, who they're hanging their license with, and if that's a reputable firm. These are all things that you can do to ensure that you know who you're doing business with, okay? One thing that I didn't put on this slide that I think is really important is if you are investing and it relates to real estate. For instance, you are lending money to a developer and that they are providing in return a lien on a property. So if they default, you can foreclose on that, right? In that situation, you want to do the legwork, or have someone you trust do the legwork for you. Okay. What that means is, have you gone out to the property? Do you see that it exists? Something actually came across my desk today, same type of situation, property secured by real estate. And, the investment sponsor promised that there are going to be buildings, houses built on the lot. And to date, they have not built a single house on the lot. And so this is just a part of due diligence. Go out to the property that they're pledging as collateral, check to see if a building exists, look it up online, ask whether there's a title search that they can provide. Oftentimes, if you're dealing with real estate, the best course of action is to close through a title company. They will be able to tell you whether there are any other liens on the property, where you sit in terms of your security level, right? So like, are you first in line? Are you second in line? Are you third in line? The investment sponsor can promise things to you, but they not actually be true. So you have to note, what is the interest rate? Is the client response, or is the borrower to pay you, a fixed amount every month when those payments are due? What happens if they don't pay? One of the things that I notice is, in the terms of the agreement, there may be a penalty fee for paying payments late. Usually, I want to say it's like 5% or something like that, 5-10%. And clients are not necessarily collecting on that late fee. But again, this is an opportunity. If you understand the terms of your agreement of the investment, you have the opportunity to collect these additional fees specified in the document. Okay. Do you have the proper documents for us to fund? One example, again, I'm going to constantly use a note secured by a piece of real estate as the example for this presentation. So for instance, we have had clients who've specified that they're investing in a note secured by real estate. In Texas, what that looks like is, it's a note, and then subsequently there's a deed of trust. The deed of trust is a lien. It allows you to bypass the court. So you don't have to go to the court, file a lawsuit, show that the borrower is in default, and then the court grants you permission to foreclose. The deed of trust allows you to bypass that process in terms of filing the lawsuit, going to the court, right? So for us, when we fund an investment here at Quest, we look for, and if you tell us it's a note secured by real estate, we look for the note and we look for the deed of trust. We have had clients who refuses to provide a deed of trust, or say that one is not necessary. And if we don't have the security document, what we're forced to do is put that in the system as an unsecured note. Okay. And so it's classified a little bit differently. And then the recourse, if you had to go and force collection or something like that, will be a little bit different as well. Okay. So working with an attorney to make sure that your document properly protects your interest in the investment, or your IRA's interest in the investment, and then understanding what recourse is available if the investment goes bad, all of that should be documented, in your investment packet, right? And if you're working with an attorney, they can help you through all the legal jargon. They can help you understand some of the nuanced clauses that are in, form documents. There might be clauses in there that you don't necessarily agree with, or that you don't think is necessary. And then there may be clauses that are extremely important to you. If you are working with an attorney to draft those documents, they can outline that for you and help you understand what's considered a breach of that agreement, right? So the documentation, I would say, is extremely important. And I definitely think it's worth it to consult an attorney before you're investing your hard-earned retirement money. And then IRA related restrictions. We have a ton of classes over IRA related restrictions. The main one, of course, is prohibited transactions, right? Do you understand what a prohibited transaction consists of? And does the investment that you're considering constitute a prohibited transaction, or could it, directly or indirectly constitute that, right? Also, if you're investing in something that incurs UBIT, do you know how to handle that? Do you have a CPA that would be able to file the taxes the tax forms for you in order to declare that UBIT and pay those taxes associated with the investment. Okay. Thoroughly understanding the IRA restrictions is so important in terms of determining what investment is right for your IRA. And then lastly, our role here at Quest. We are the custodian of your account, right? So however you send in the money, whether it be a contribution or you're transferring or rolling in from an existing account, we take that money, and then once you've given us written instructions to purchase an investment or to pay a fee, we go ahead and do that, okay? We do not automatically do anything because we need the written instructions from our clients, okay? That's the whole purpose of a self-directed account. So when we're looking at investment documents, all that we are looking for is that the packet is complete. So if it's a note secured by real estate, we have the note, we have the deed of trust, and we have our direction of investment form, which is the written instructions for us to fund the investment. We also look over the documentation to make sure that it's not blatantly prohibited. What would be blatantly prohibited is if I use my IRA to lend money to my husband's business. That would be blatantly prohibited. And those are the things that Quest would look for because, they'll see my husband's name on the document and they'll probably ask additional questions that would, unearth that this is a prohibited transaction, right? And then also we make sure that you have adequate funds in your account to fund the transaction. And then we make sure that the investment is not administratively infeasible. By administratively infeasible, that can mean an array of things, but mainly the investment itself is not something our board has deemed, to be restricted, that we're not allowed to invest in, or if, the particular investment, we wouldn't be able to ascertain like an annual fair market valuation, that would then make it administratively infeasible for us to hold. So things like that. But what Quest does not do is we do not look at the terms of the investment to determine whether it's a good or bad investment, okay? So, we treat a note that has a 5% interest rate the same as a note that has a 12% interest rate, okay? Of course, in my mind, I think the 12% is better, but if the 5% is what the client is able to negotiate, it doesn't necessarily make it an investment that we cannot fund. Okay, so we definitely cannot provide any opinions as it relates to the investment documents. If the vesting is off or if it's incomplete, for instance, it's a note without a maturity date, those are things that we'll point out and ask the client to remediate before we fund the actual investment. Okay, all right. So now that we funded the investment, you have to continue doing due diligence for your investment. It doesn't stop at the beginning. And then due diligence for the life of your investment can be very minimal. It can be very robust. It just depends on who you are as an investor, right? What type of care do you want to give to your account and to your retirement, okay? Things that you should consider. First and foremost, this is the easiest way to gauge whether your investment is performing. The payments. Are the payments coming in, if you understand the terms of the agreement, you'll know whether the payments should be coming in annually, monthly, quarterly, or is it like a balloon note where they're paying interest payments monthly and the principal value is paid at maturity, okay? Other things you want to consider about payments is, are they being applied to your account correctly, okay? For a balloon note, if it's interest only, generally, we apply that as interest and the value of the note stays the same. If you have an amortized note, I like to just think of amortized notes as like a mortgage payment for your house or a car note, because what you're doing with an amortized note is you're paying down a portion of the interest and a portion of the principal, okay? So if your borrower is sending in money to Quest, it is important to specify how much goes to principal and then how much goes to interest. So this will help you kind of keep track of how much you have left on this note, because if you apply anything to principal, we will reduce the value of the note for you over time, okay? And annual FMVs. Annual FMVs, of course, is very huge for our company here. We've always collected it historically as a company, but since we became the Texas Department, we became regulated by the Texas Department of Banking and became a trust company, we are now required to collect supporting documentation for annual FMVs. Okay, and while some of our clients are, not sure why it is that the requirements have changed, this is just a good opportunity once a year for all clients to look at their account and see how their investment is performing. The annual FMV should help you meet that due diligence requirement that you should be conducting for your IRA. Okay. It should, you should be reaching out to the investment sponsor, for instance, if you're invested in a private entity, for them to tell you, how well the company did that year. If the company promised you quarterly or annual financials, satisfying the FMV requirement should be easy. And again, if they're promising these statements and they're not providing them to you, you have the opportunity once a year, when we send out those reminders, for you to follow up with your investment advisor to see where you're at, or where your investment is at and how your investment is doing. Okay, so make sure that if you're promised financials, that they're sending them to you. If they're not sending them to you, that is, potentially a red flag for you to look into, ask more questions. If you are invested with a company, just know that as an investor, you have certain rights. You have the rights, to understand the wealth of the company. You have the right to ask for financials. This should be outline in like your subscription agreement or the company agreement, things of that nature. So if you sat down with an attorney, walk through all of those documents, you should understand what rights your IRA has as an investor and what information you can demand from these people. Okay. And so use annual FMVs not as a nagging task, but as an opportunity to check in on your investment at least once a year, just to see how well it's doing. Okay. Other maintenance. So other maintenance can come in the form of paying taxes for a property held in your IRA. Other maintenance could be custodial fees. What fee schedule are you on with Quest, and does that make the most financial sense for you and what you're invested in? And how are those fees being paid? We had a client recently who had an inherited IRA account. An inherited IRA account, of course, the rules are that, you inherit the amount of money or the assets at the time that the, grantor passes away. You're unable to make any contributions into the inherited account. So basically, the balance of the account is really important. You kind of want to maintain that until you have to take it out. And so in that situation, we had a client that unknowingly had her account set to debit. So what we were doing, we were taking asset, administration fees out of her account. So when she was ready to invest using her inherited account, she realized she started with less funds. And so this is something you want to be cognizant of. At Quest, we offer monthly statements for our clients, right? So you have the opportunity to review the transactions made in your account that month and point out any discrepancies to us within 60 days for us to correct that. Okay. This is definitely another way that you can conduct due diligence throughout the life of your investment, is reviewing your statements to make sure that your borrowers are paying on time, fees are being assessed properly, things of that nature. Okay. You can, and then of course, other maintenance can include things like, paying rehab expenses for a property that's held in your IRA. If you're using a third-party loan servicer, you'll have to pay those expenses through the IRA as well. And so those are all things involved in the maintenance of an asset after you've purchased it in your account. Okay. And then at the very end, two possibilities can happen for your investment at the end. You receive a payoff. It went the way it was supposed to. So you receive all the funds you were promised, and then some plus the interest, right? It is deposited into your IRA account. We at Quest do not automatically assume that the payoff is the final payoff. So what we request is that the client submit what's known as a disposition of asset form. This form basically gives us permission to close out the asset. So if you are anticipating a payoff from an investment in your account, it may be a good idea to just submit the disposition of asset form in advance. So once we see the corresponding payoff, we'll go ahead and close that out for you. Otherwise, if it's in the reverse, we will contact you and ask you for this information. And making sure that you submit the disposition of asset form is very, very important. One, it helps your asset or your account, the value be at an appropriate balance, and it's not inflated by the payoff amount. Also, it helps with administrative fees. If you're on the asset-based fee plan, you're paying per asset in your account, right? So if you have an asset that has been paid off and should be closed, you definitely want to remove that and minimize any fees that you have to pay administratively, okay? And then, of course, in instances where the asset does not go well, it goes bad, or it goes into default, what due diligence do you have to conduct at this point, okay? If an investment goes bad or if an investment goes into default, you have to reference the initial investment documents and ask yourself or your attorney, should be your attorney, what recourse does your IRA have under these investment documents, okay? You have to, as a fiduciary of your own IRA account, you have to know all the recourse available to your IRA, and you have to take all the necessary actions to recover the money used for this investment as a fiduciary of your own IRA, right? So this is you acting in the best interest of your IRA. And then can you prove that you've taken all available action? In order for us to deem the investment bad and write it off of your account as a bad investment, we have to have supporting documentation that shows you as a fiduciary have taken all necessary actions to recover on this investment and that there is no additional recourse, okay? And then if that's the case, we go through what we call internally as our zero valuation process. In this process, we collect documentation, of course, to show that the fiduciary of the account has taken all necessary actions to recover on the investment, okay? And generally at this point, it becomes a legal matter, right? So if you have a note and the borrower has defaulted and you have this deed of trust, you'd like to move forward with foreclosure, you have to deem the asset in default, right? So you work with an attorney, they send the default notices to the borrower and then they go forward with foreclosure. Okay, you work with an attorney throughout that. But let's say you didn't hold a first lien deed of trust, you held a second lien, and the first lien forecloses. And whatever the first lien was able to recoup only covered, their loan and what they lent out to the borrower, right? So you, in a second lien position, you're now left with an unsecured loan. So what recourse do you have at that point if you cannot go forward with foreclosure? You have to go after the borrower directly. Did your documentation have a personal guarantee if you're lending to a company? If you had a personal guarantee, it allows you to go after the individual. If you didn't have a personal guarantee, it allows you to go after the company if the company has any additional assets for you to recoup from, right? So these are all things that you want to consider. If your investment does go bad and you are forced to work with an attorney to recover on your investment, please ensure and know that all representation should be for the IRA. So the attorney is representing the IRA at every stage, that they're not representing you individually, and that fees associated with the representation is coming from the IRA, okay? We have had clients who hired an attorney who represented them individually, and if the investment sponsor is savvy, which we have seen, they will say that, the individual does not have standing to sue. Okay. It is the IRA that owns the investment, and therefore the IRA as an entity needs to move forward with any legal action. The attorney needs to represent the IRA itself and not the individual. Okay. And so working with an attorney throughout the entire process, although maybe somewhat expensive outright, but it will help you protect your investment. You definitely don't just want to go to an attorney once your asset is in default. What happens in that scenario is, the attorney may not be familiar with the investment documents drafted. They may not, be comfortable with the terms in which you've executed the agreement, right? So they may not be able to help you. But if you're working with an attorney from start to finish, and they understand the investment documents, they understand how the investment document protects your IRA, they will be in a better position to help you if ever your investment goes bad. And then again, for Quest, we can't just receive a call from a client that claims their investment is bad and automatically close it out. We have to document proof that the investment is bad, that it didn't constitute like a distribution, that the account holder acted in the best interest of their account, and we have all the proof to provide that. At that point, and only then, will we allow a client to zero value an asset. Okay. So another thing to note with the zero value process is the zero value process allows you to take your asset down to $1. It tells you that the asset is worthless. You have the opportunity, once the asset is taken down to zero, to either leave it in your account or take a distribution of the asset. Okay. If you take a distribution of the asset and you happen to recover money at some point in the distant future, maybe there was a class action lawsuit against the individual, or an SEC investigation against the individual, and you receive a settlement, just know that you cannot put that back into your IRA. Okay. Once you take a distribution of an asset that you deem is worthless and you recover on it at some point in the future, all of what you recover could be taxable to you personally. Okay. So deeming an asset to be worthless or zero value is very, clients sometimes do it just to save from administrative fees, but I think you should take additional precaution before devaluing an investment, because it's definitely not easy to fix any tax consequences or anything like that associated with an investment, right? So you want to make sure that you're working with proper legal counsel and taking the proper necessary actions before, resulting to zero valuing, right? So just in summary, we've discussed that due diligence should be conducted at all phases of your investment, not just the beginning, okay? And due diligence throughout the life of your investment will look different based on your tolerance level as an investor, okay, for your IRA. And then doing, for instance, your annual FMV is an opportunity to conduct due diligence. We definitely shouldn't view that, for instance, as a nagging task or anything like that. It is very important for you to check in on your investment at least annually. I would like to say that I know sometimes it's really tough to admit that, you made a bad decision that has led, some of your hard-earned retirement money, to disappear. I understand that is sometimes really hard to deal with. But dealing with it head on, contacting our office, talking to us about what you should do now that you feel your asset is bad, is definitely the first step. Because if you ignore the situation, what will happen is you will incur, administrative fees that are unnecessary. And then if the fees become delinquent in your account because you haven't paid enough attention to it, we may result in distributing it at the last known value. And so that becomes a taxable consequence to you. And once you get the 1099 and the IRS is coming, knocking on your door for these taxes, usually that's when our clients contact us and say, hey, this investment is bad, and I need to devalue it. It becomes very difficult for us at that point because we have already distributed the asset and reported it to the IRS. So checking on your investments, dealing with problems head on will definitely save you from a lot of headache down the road. Okay. And then, as I mentioned with the zero value process, we cannot close out a bad asset just because the client claims that it's bad. We have to have proof that you, as a fiduciary, have exhausted all recourses for your IRA in order to close that out. And also, if you distribute a bad asset from your account and you miraculously recover on that investment at some time in the future, you cannot put it back in your IRA. Okay, so that also could result in a taxable consequence for you. Okay, and then last, a consultation with an attorney to review your investment documents can cost you a few $100s an hour, but it can save you thousands and thousands of dollars in litigation or even foreclosure costs if you had to go down that route. So although, it may seem a little redundant to seek, legal advice before you're investing, even if you've done it a lot, I think the price of legal counsel is a small price to pay considering, how large these investments can get from time to time, right? We see all the time 5-figure investments, 6-figure investments. It's definitely worth the price to seek legal advice before, you're funding these large investments with your hard-earned retirement money. So that is the conclusion of my presentation for today. I will open the floor up to questions, and I will do my very best to.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining so much. In the chat box, I've gone ahead and I've put 2 emails here. So if you guys have any questions or inquiries or would like to receive more information, please email iraspecialist@questtrust.com. If you'd like a copy of this PowerPoint, you can email marketing@questtrust.com and we'll be happy to send you a copy. Honestly, you can email either one of them. I'm part of the IRA Specialist email here. So if you wanted to say, hey, I'd love a copy of this presentation, just go ahead and write that in the email there. We'll send it right back to you. iraspecialist@questtrust.com. Before I let you all go, I want to show you one thing very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right here. If you are in Houston, this is the event that we're having tonight. It's our Houston Networking Social, right? So if you're looking for networking opportunities, looking to meet like-minded individuals, as well as more education, and looking just to have, a few drinks and some food here tonight at the office, please come by if you are from Houston. We're trying to revamp our in-person classes. We're trying to get back into that in-person networking. We love the webinars. They're very convenient. However, there's nothing like meeting a person, shaking their hand, and trying to make some business happen there. So our Houston Social will be happening tonight at our Quest office. If you have any questions about that, you can also just go ahead and email anyone on our team. So I thank you guys for your time. Thank you guys for spending your afternoon, your lunchtime with us. If you have any questions, we'll talk soon. Thank you guys.